All right. Welcome back to Influential Dental, the podcast that's bringing on some of the most influential people in the dental space in the world to hear their story, a little bit about their background, their mentors, all that good stuff. But we have a really cool special guest, and he's no stranger to the podcasting world and many other things. But before we jump in and introduce him, hey, Mike, how you doing?
Great, Julieanne. Great to be back with our audience and talking with you today.
Awesome. Do you want to kick off our introduction?
Sure, that would be great. And yeah, always enjoy our podcast and the special guests we have. And everyone will have a treat today and probably does know Dr. Alex Sharp from Shared Practices Services, the CEO and practice owner in Arkansas. And look forward just to talking with him about his journey. I got to spend a little bit of time with him as you did, Julianne, at an event a couple weeks ago, and want to talk about your talk because again it's very timely for our podcast being on influence. But just to start, Dr. Sharp, again, thank you for being here. And how's your day going? How are things going with you?
Man, any day that we're behind a microphone is a good day, Michael. And Julianne, thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed meeting you guys and learning about the good work that you're doing. So I've been trying to play catch up the last couple of weeks, trying to go through as many of your podcasts as possible to just prep for this. And number one, love what you're doing. Number two, I love the return to print journalism because I think that there's an unmet need for that in the marketplace. So on all levels, mad respect for what you're doing. And I just think in dentistry, there's such a herd mentality that we find ourselves falling prey to, where the lowest common denominator philosophy just tends to be pervasive. And so what I like to think about is if we were starting with a blank sheet of paper, what would we do? And that's sort of my approach, as countercultural as that may be.
I love that. And, it's funny because we got a little of that whole, it's a little disruptive to come back to print. And it's funny because I remember we were talking about this a little while ago. Mike and I were saying how we sketched out like a stick figure on paper. And we're like, how fun would it be to do a magazine? And he was like, but why a magazine? And he really challenged me on that. But it has taken off like crazy. And I think because we're especially focusing on lifestyle and mindset, which has never really been done in dental, right? And I do think it elevates, but some of the work that you've done kind of led the way, right? And you've been in the industry for how long now? I'd love for our listeners to hear a little bit of your background. Do you mind sharing a little bit?
Yeah.
We could share, but I'd rather they hear it from you.
Yeah, well, for sure. I mean, I graduated dental school in 2015, and that was an interesting time to graduate because the consolidation in the industry was on the ascent. It was on the rise, and I think it was more of a silent process back then, where people that were graduating, the default was still to get into private practice for most of us. Like, we knew that DSOs were a thing. Gun to the head, we probably couldn't have named very many of them coming out of school. So a lot of us just came out and started working, and we didn't really have a lot of sophistication as to the types of jobs that we accepted. We just thought, okay, high percentage equals more money, that's good. And then we just had to learn the hard way. And so I started listening to dental podcasts. I started trying to contribute on Dental Town on message boards. Remember those?
Oh, yeah.
And then so I just met the right people. I expanded my network. I got lucky with meeting a lot of people that were contributing to Shared Practices. It was our original practice management focused podcast. And one thing led to another, and I started teaching and consulting and running mastermind groups, and with the express purpose of how do we actually make sure that dentists derive the most amount of benefit from their careers that they possibly can. Because this is a noble profession. We all love it. And it hurts to see dentists under the boot heel of forces that keep them from rising to what they're capable of. Because I worked for a lot of years doing drill, fill, bill, Medicaid. I eventually bought my own practice and learned that I loved implants, and I loved providing services that people were happy to pay me for. What a concept, right? Because there's something, as a dentist, there's something empowering, to use that overused word, about how when people want the services that you provide, when they see the value that you're providing for them, it's different than them being dragged by the ear against their better judgment and receiving a quadrant of fillings, which happens also to be a commodity. So I think there's some kind of a connection between doing what others don't, resisting the urge to be a commodity, as a lot of dentists find their way into being through happenstance, and just finding a way to buck those trends and trying to find points of differentiation that allow you to say, you know what, I do something, whether it's the service that I render, the availability that I have, the procedures that I do, something that's different that provides dentists a toehold to be able to do more per unit time, more per day, more per month, more per year, that actually moves them forward and moves dentistry forward.
And there's so many things I want to unpack here, but one of the things that struck me about what you've done with your career is that you kind of led with a podcast before you even had a DSO. And when we met you, you were speaking, I believe, at Dykema's leadership group on
Hmm.
influence, which
Yeah.
we were laughing. We're like, yes, that's what we're talking about, right? How do we leverage influence of the individuals, others,
Hmm.
and why is that so powerful? Why is that so important? We didn't come into this saying we want to go be influential. We were saying let's align with people who are influential because they're doing something right, and let's hear their story. So let's hear your story. Like, how did you go from podcasts to DSO, out of curiosity?
Yeah. Influence is the outcome. I
Yeah.
don't think influence is the initial goal. Influence was just a happy accident, to use the Bob Ross term. It was the happy accident that came from podcasting first, because we had this vision of dentists just achieving more in their careers and being able to hang up the handpiece X number of decades into the future and say, you know what, I squeezed as much value and purpose and fulfillment as I possibly could out of this journey. And so that's what we're trying to aim towards, and helping dentists to ask the right questions to get to positions to be able to do the most with their careers. And through that pursuit, we gained influence. We built a community. So to me, a community is a group of people that come together around something that they care about. Like that's all a community is. And so we built a community, started as a Facebook group, then it became like a Slack group, then it became a mastermind, and then COVID happened. And when COVID happened, I think a lot of us started asking questions. What's this all about? Do I want to keep doing my career the way that I've always done it just because I always have? And my business partners and I realized, you know what? This is a gift in a weird way, because things happen to you or they happen for you. And we decided that the COVID shutdown happened for us. And we had all these people in our ears, all of our clients, all of our friends, all the people that we've been working with for years. And they said, when are we going to do something together? When are we going to marshal our resources under one umbrella and do something bigger than ourselves? And that was sort of the kick in the shorts that we needed to be able to start the DSO. So we started as a podcast, we did seminars, we did the whole thing, and then we just had enough doctors in our ecosystem that said, could we do something together? And so that's where I think a lot of the differentiation comes for us, because so many companies out there, they have this concept of building the DSO. They build the DSO first, and then they try to shoehorn that into a community. Whereas for us, we had the connective tissue of the community, the trust, the speed to belief, the alignment that came about organically. And then we layered that into the platform. So then I think that was probably, hindsight, the best way to do it, but that's not the way that most people end up doing it. So we did it the hard way. And the last thing I'll say on it is, part of the reason why influence matters is because that's the scarce commodity nowadays. So back in the day, information was scarce. We went through the agricultural age, then the industrial age, where harnessing people's efforts through machinery was the thing. And then that became sort of, in the background, and then eventually it became the information age, where information scarcity allowed for asymmetric levels of power and alpha opportunities. And then now everybody has information. We all have the access to the same exact information, unless it's something cutting edge like betting markets. But now influence is the scarce commodity. The ability to wield your position of being able to communicate and get people aligned around a certain vision, that's what's scarce. Being in people's ear holes is scarce. It's hard to do. You can't cheat your way to it. So by being able to spurn other people into action, I think that's the scarce commodity. That's what we're all shooting for.
That. Oh my gosh. Go ahead, Mike. There's just so much.
Well, John, regarding influence, and it's so refreshing to hear that. Being in the industry almost 20 years myself, more on the sales side, marketing, training, education side, as and a non-dentist, and even how Julie and I started our company. It's friends first, right? We became friends first. Like your journey, we saw how we acted, interacted, our values aligned. We are good, good people at the end of the day. But we had that vision, right? And it was built on that first. And I have seen what you talked about so much, that they build a cart and then they try to fill it with, after the fact. So to hear you say that, how you organically grew your company and how you're operating is, basically exactly how we we did it ourselves by being friends first, also having fun, which I know kind of doing some research and knowing you a little bit now, you like to have fun as well as we all do, but also doing it at the highest level, right? And doing it as a team sport. I've always been a team sport guy, whether it's been in business or actually playing, football in college as a team sport. And I enjoy that more, right? That
Alex,
camaraderie.
he played for the Oregon Ducks.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yeah.
Well,
No big deal.
yeah, not,
D1.
yeah, it was a few years ago. But it taught me a lot, as sports too. People who've done sports or been in businesses, being individual among a team and winning all together. It's not independent of another. So again, I appreciate that concept that you do bring and live by on a day-to-day basis. And again, it is so refreshing today as well, because again, with AI, all the technology, all the systems, we are people first. We are humans, right? We have to interact. We have to grow together. So Julianne, you wanted to speak a little bit more on your observations or what that means to
Well,
you?
I just have so Alex, I think for me, I think about people who are out here coaching, right? We're trying to help other people and we're trying to influence their mindset. And, many of us have read the great books about the different ways to influence people, but ultimately we're trying to shift sort of an industry. Those of us who really care, we're really trying to have that significant impact. And we really truly are on a mission to help people and lift people up and have them, step into their potential. So what are you seeing right now in the industry in terms of where there are opportunities for you to have an impact? And what are you doing to impact people's lives in the space currently right now? I know you've got the CSO, you've got the podcast, you've got all these things going on. You're still doing consulting too, right?
Yeah, that's our first love,
Yeah.
was the coaching, the consulting. Started off as doctor to doctor. Then we made it more previous office manager led
Mhm.
coaching that allows the efficiency piece to be layered in atop whatever the clinical philosophy is. There's always ground to cover in terms of being able to optimize that, so that whatever the table stakes are clinically, we're able to help the doctors do more and then more effectively. But I want to riff on what Michael was saying a second ago about the team aspect of dentistry, or I would say lack thereof,
Mhm.
because you hear a lot of people in dentistry talk about dentistry as still being a single player sport. They treat it like it's golf. And I think that is an antiquated concept. I don't think dentistry in the 21st century should be the same as golf or tennis. I think dentistry is a team sport when it's at its best. And I think that's going to be a notion that stands the test of time. Like I can shout that from the rooftops right now from my perch, but
Mhm.
and it can sound crazy and like I'm like the ravings of a lunatic, but I really think that dentistry at its best is a team sport. And what I mean by that is when you have a lot of dentists doing the same thing, lit by the same fire, trying to pursue the same type of excellence across the country, then you get so much better, so much faster, and you derive so much more benefit and purpose from your career than if you're just doing your own road. Think about the Oregon Trail, right? You're trying to manifest destiny westward across the US, and you're having to hack your way through previously uncharted territory, versus if you're following a paved path with people that are arm in arm with you, showing you the ropes, speeding along your development, and getting you from A to B faster and better, and with a little more substance, then you're going to have a much better career than if you're just trying to DIY it for the sake of DIYing it. And one notion that I've shared with a few people, that I'm still workshopping the metaphor, but a lot of doctors say they want autonomy because that's the vocabulary that they have. They equate autonomy with better career. When in fact, I think what they really want is success, because there's not a perfect one to one correlation between autonomy and success. There can be, but I do think that if you have built a better mousetrap and you developed a great way to serve patients, align teams, help doctors to become what they want to become, then if we say, hey, instead of having a menu of about 35 different treatment options like you do in most general dental practices, if you say, you know what, we're going to take the stylistic creative license and we're going to restrict the menu of what our practice does, so that if a patient comes in and they need stuff that we don't provide, then we'll make a referral. But if they do need the type of procedures that we do, then there's a lot of freedom that comes from those constraints, in my opinion. So for us at SPG, for example, we find the best general dentists who've been to the right implant residencies, that have taken the right CE, that have the same type of screw loose that I do, that want to do full arch implant dentistry, then we put those people in positions to succeed. And it's because of the team ethos. It's because we have 50 dentists that have gone through the same training program, that do the same type of procedures, whether we're in Spokane, Washington, or Sarasota, Florida, we're all rowing in the same direction. And we're all locked arms, doing the same thing, sharing cases in Discord. We go through the same SPG university. But my point is that we push each other to be better because we are in the position to be able to understand what each of us is doing in the trenches. And it's hard to relate to people when they're doing drastically different divergent paths.
Yeah, and regarding that, I think in an ideal world, and again, whether it's playing football, having a company or multiple practices, I think a lot of it is ego driven, right? I mean, obviously, in the professional world, and dentists and dentistry, very well trained, very successful, very driven. However, I think the ones that get it, the ones that can see necessarily, what is it, the forest through the trees, and see big picture and align themselves with like-minded people, and to ask for help when they need help, and to recognize that, and just to be open to it, I guess. It sounds like you are able, in the position you are now, to actually pre-screen and find the right fit of doctor, dentist, or associate that wants to be part of your team. Tell me from your perspective about that, kind of the ego in dentistry. Obviously, there's a gold standard of you need to practice high quality dentistry, but what is that kind of that it that you look for when you're aligning yourselves with either whether it's with companies you want to work with or dentists that you want to attract to work with your with SPG?
Well, my favorite dentist to work with is someone like me who's had his ego stamped out of him over time. Because dentistry has a way of humbling us all.
Story of
And
my life. What are you
my
talking about?
gosh, yeah, yeah. The game is how many times can you get punched in the face and still keep going? Because dentistry is unforgiving. I mean, you're doing microsurgeries on people's faces. No one wants to be there. Every single day, patients are lining up to tell you it's nothing personal, doc, but I just hate the dentist. So you're on that merry-go-round of negativity a lot of the time, and so you reach this point as a provider, or the best ones do, where they don't become completely bulletproof to all that negativity, but they have a way of sitting with it, setting it aside, and saying that, okay, I can see through whatever the superficial messaging is for whatever that person's telling me, and understand the kernel of wisdom or truth behind that. But to your other question, Michael, it's all about what I would say preferential screening. So for us, we talked about influence. Part of the way that we wield influence in dentistry is that, yeah, we have our original practice management focused educational business podcast, but we've also built the Full Arch podcast, which is our way of getting in between the ears of the types of doctors that are lit up by the types of procedures that we do. If you're someone like me that loves this type of dentistry, you'll listen to the Full Arch podcast and you'll learn about techniques, you'll learn about new technology, you'll learn about planning cases digitally, you'll learn about the latest thread patterns on implants. And then for people like you guys, if you're an insomniac, you'll listen to it and you'll go to sleep. but 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 the but
You
for the
gotta love
right
it.
people, it's like the flame to attract all of the moths. And so we
Yeah.
have these dentists that want to work with us, that listen to the podcast, come to our seminars, do hands-on training. And so we have a backlog of doctors that want to work with us because there just isn't a solution for the surgically inclined general dentist to do this type of procedure at scale in the US. Like we're the solution for that. So because of that, we've subverted the traditional supply and demand curve, where usually you ask most DSO executive, what's the biggest pain point? It's doctor recruitment, doctor retention all the time. For us, luckily, knock on wood, that's not our that's not our constraint. You're always going to have bottlenecks. You're always going to have constraints in your business. And the name of the game is figuring out where is that bottleneck, and then preferentially allocating resources to alleviate just that bottleneck. And so for a lot of places, it's the attraction and retention of really good providers. And again, for us, we have different bottlenecks, but I think that's the way to do it. And you see this across the tech sector, for example. So I love to be a student of the tech sector because there's a lot of parallels, and sometimes dentistry is 5 or 10 years behind the tech world, but there's things that rhyme with what is important for them and important for us. And you look at what's happening with, for example, OpenAI. They just bought the Technology Brothers Podcast Network, TBPN. They launched that podcast 2 years ago, and they already got bought out for 9 figures by OpenAI. Why would OpenAI pay 9 figures for a podcast?
Yeah.
Influence.
Right.
Yeah.
Influence is the currency.
Yeah. So it's interesting because it takes me back. I was telling somebody the other day, they opened a coffee shop and and a wine shop, and we were talking about the power of the network, right? Because they come with this community, right? they signed a 10-year lease. I'm like, who signs a 10-year lease on a coffee shop? And, because I'm just thinking that's just, that's a leap of faith, but they're not, they're no dummies to community, to have this in community. They have no doubt that they will create success. And I had opened an art gallery once, and I sold literally a gallery that it was a lease with nothing in it, nothing. I'm telling you what we literally went in and would put artists art on the walls, and it was consignment, and so when we sold it, what we sold was our
All
community.
right. Mhm.
And so it was all the value was in that community that we had built. So, but one of the reasons that people tune into our podcast and read our magazine is because we tell the stories behind all of the success of these people who are on our show and in the magazine. And so, Alex, of course, I'm going to have a question that gets personal here is, what's your growing up like? What was your story? What made you kind of step into this? And was it the school of hard knocks, or was it because you were, raised with this work ethic, or what's your background? What's your story? Like, what brought you here?
Yeah, I was one of those annoying kids that knew he was going to be a dentist when he was 8 years old. Like if you would have
Wow.
asked me, I just knew it. It was planted from a young age. My granddad was a dentist, and I think there was a certain allure to dentistry because of being your own boss, setting your own hours, being a pillar of the community. So I had a single-minded focus on that from, elementary school age through college and then into dental school. And then the rude awakening happened in dental school when I realized, oh my gosh, I'm not the best. Because like all through school, you can crush it, you can have perfect grades, all through college, perfect grades. And then you get to dental school and you actually meet people that are genetically encoded to do that thing. And you see what it looks like when someone is the right person in the right seat. Jim Collins calls it being in frame. So he just wrote a new book called What to Make of a Life, and it's a departure from a lot of his business texts. And I highly recommend reading it because he goes into personal development from a different angle. And what he talks about is we all have these different genetic encodings, and it takes being in the right frame to highlight what those encodings could be. And he gives examples of people that have very synonymous paths, but then they diverged at a certain point. And it's because people took different paths to dealing with adversity than people that are like their equal pair in the analysis. And so what I saw in dental school was, okay, there's these maybe 10 or 15 people in this class who have golden hands that can have an idea and make the wax tooth look just like the plastic tooth. And I'm just sitting there like a caveman dragging my knuckles going, how the hell did you do that? That's impressive. And so that was my first where there's smoke, there's fire. That okay, as a clinician, I can do good work. I can do solid work. I can over deliver for my patients relative to their expectations, but I'm not genetically encoded to be a dentist. I'm 6'7". Look at my giant hands. Like, it's not built for it. And so then I had these little signals that I picked up on after graduation in the course of expanding my network and working with people that were like-minded. And I figured out that, okay, my superpower, my encoding is around communicating value to others, aligning others, helping others unlock what they want to get out of dentistry, because I love the profession. I love what we do for people. We're in a vaunted position amongst the broader populace where we can do a lot of great things for people that need it. And my strength isn't in the doing, it's in the leading. And so I think that's I actually just wrote a graduation card for the son of one of my longtime dental assistants. And I tried to write something that was actionable for him because you're graduating from high school, you don't know anything, or most of us don't. I didn't. And I tried to tell him that when in doubt, follow what you're interested in. Because passion gets overused. The word that I like is fascination. Orient yourself towards what you're fascinated by, toward where you would do it regardless of what you got paid for it. So follow the fascination. That's what I did. And I did that later than some, earlier than others. But for the listeners, follow your fascination, because that's when you burn out. Is if you're putting forth crazy effort, 80 to 100 hours a week on something that you're not genetically encoded to do, that's when you burn out. Whereas if you're orienting that effort towards something that you are genetically encoded to do, what looks like work to others is not work for you.
Yeah, play to your strengths, right?
Yeah.
Play to your strengths, and I learned that the hard way. Mine was more physical in nature, playing D1 football, so I definitely wasn't
Hmm.
a big fish in a small pond once that, and I got hit in the face literally, and knew my football career was soon to be over. I just genetically and physically and mentally just didn't learn a lot of life lessons, right? And decided that what I did know is that I did care and did like to work in a team environment, and did want to be in the business world because my father and so on. But I appreciate that, and I think that so many young dentists, and Julianne coaches and does high achieving and all types, and I'm sure she can speak on that all day long about, why they're doing what they're doing, whether it's professionally or personally, and why it all matters. But before I had one other question. I did want to also thank American Dental Institute, and Julianne, I know you have some other folks to thank for our podcast that we work with, and American Dental Institute out of Orlando, Florida is a great partner to help us have this podcast. And
Yeah,
Julianne,
well,
do you have
I'll
a few
chime
folks
in.
you want to message?
Yeah, we'll be podcasting Dykema this year in collaboration with Pearl. We're going to be doing a lot of collaborations with Sprint Ray and a lot of other great companies out there. And again, going back to influence, right? We all go further together than we ever go alone. So we're starting to cross promote and do these collaborations together in the podcasting environment, which has been really interesting. Also in collaboration with the magazine Influence for dental professionals, which has been really fun. But I am still even more curious about a deeper dive into you, Alex, because it's very interesting what causes people to behave certain ways and pass on that knowledge and help others and really help them to create change that's lasting, like permanent change. So, for example, Mike and I did a neurolinguistic programming certification program because it helps people to create lasting change. What is it that you do that helps create lasting change? What are you seeing in terms of the effects of that? And just give us a little glimpse into where that comes from and how that works for you, because I know it's working. I know you're doing it. You've got an incredible career. That is not by accident. So I love actionable stuff. If there's anything that people can take away, but how are you helping people? Like, what's causing that change?
I think it's as simple as saying no to stuff. For me, I don't get a pop culture reference unless it was before 2010. What that means is I haven't seen very many movies. I don't watch sports. I read books. I hang out with my family, and I work on business. And that doesn't leave me with any kind of like a gaping hole to fill. It's just that I'm doing what I enjoy and what I see value in doing. And so I think that's the overarching advice that I would give, is just to occasionally assess, how am I spending my time? It sounds so basic. We've all been told to do the exercise where you write out, okay, of the 24 hours in the day for an entire week, where is each of those hours going? Or each 30-minute increment. And it's astounding if you think about, what am I doing on my phone? Am I on this app versus educating myself? Could I be
But
building relationships? And so that's my annoying answer, is that I just say no to stuff that doesn't serve what I expressly define as being important to me.
But I just want to make a note here. So you just said, I know we've all done this exercise, but very frankly, in dental, a lot of people have never done that exercise. So why is it that nobody in dental, or many people, I shouldn't say nobody, but the majority, I would say, have not been trained on those simple skill sets that you're talking
Great
about?
question. That's because dentists have treated their schedules as being something outside of their control for a lot of years. And I'll speak from experience, because I would show up to work and I would say, "Oh, that's my schedule. These are the patients that need me today." And I wouldn't do any other type of inquiry beyond that. And that's tough when you think that every patient on the schedule has the same amount of, air quotes, value, because they get equal amounts of time on your schedule. And so just it could be uh, a non-revenue generating procedure, it could be a follow-up procedure, or it could be the most beneficial procedure that you've ever provided for someone. But unless you put in the effort to actually categorize how you use your time, or create rules or waterfalls, or some type of a heuristic for how your time gets apportioned, then you're at effect to whatever your team is doing to divvy up your time. And so a lot of dentists just say, "Fill my schedule. I'll figure it out. Schedule them first. I'll ask questions later." And that's how you meet your overarching, like, top line financial goals. But then it breaks apart eventually when you try to be all things to all people. More new patients. I'm doing the same procedure mix. I'm scheduling the same way. And at some point, that's when burnout happens, in my opinion, because then you're getting grumpy because you're doing a quadrant of fillings when you could be spending your time doing implants or sleep apnea devices or ortho or whatever you prefer to be doing that you actually enjoy, that you feel like patients derive the most benefit from. But no, I think dentists have an unhealthy relationship with how their time gets divvied up, if they even have any type of relationship with it at all. Because to your point, Julianne, a lot of people don't even take the step back to think about it. One of the most successful air quotes dentists that I know, that was a mentor of mine growing up. He's been doing the same thing for 35 years. And the thing is, fill my schedule, I'll get it all done. Hyper productive, makes more money than I think most people would consider possible in dentistry. But then your body breaks down, people get let down, you can't be all things to all people despite however hard you try. And so I think that's the secret, is if you're a provider, if you're a wet finger dentist and you operate within four walls, you have to control your time, as counter as that can feel or seem.
But it's just interesting because, you learn so much when I think you do consulting and coaching, and you constantly have a mirror in front of your face saying, "Oh, how does that apply to me? I need to do that."
Bingo.
But it's amazing with AI right now because you can run scenarios just by speaking in those scenarios and get perspective that you never could get before without a coach. I absolutely think it's very important to have humans. There's a human connection piece that's so necessary still along with it. But I'll give you an example. I was coaching somebody and they were just trying to make a decision on, a particular sale of something and how to, manage this, and they're trying to hold on for an equity gain to a certain point. But when we really ran the numbers, what we found is that by waiting 2 or 3 more years for that equity gain, they're actually going to put themselves in a massive deficit as opposed to exiting now, taking the equity and then redeploying it, right? And so there and with a tremendous amount of risk if they don't do it now. And so there's very interesting things that are coming up with AI. How are you seeing that as a benefit, a fault? Where are people going right or wrong with it? And how are you utilizing it to help people right now?
I mean, it's a lot of people are yelling about the sky falling with AI, which I think is counterproductive. Because just like every other technological upheaval that's happened, the dust settles in ways that we can't really yet predict. The age-old example is all the people that were blacksmiths or making horseshoes or attaching horseshoes. They were all out of work, but then fast forward 5 or 10 years, they have even better jobs
Right.
than they had because of what cars and interstate transport unlocked. So I think that's where we're at, is that macro wise, we're going to end up in a better position. We just don't know exactly how it's going to look. But then in the short term, in the micro, my gosh, you can really double down on what you said, Julianne, about the human connection, because the human connection is the signal that cuts through all the noise. There's so much noise nowadays. And I think that it allows us that are in the service industry to double down on what only we can do. And I think that that's the secret, is to figure out, okay, what can I be automating on the sidelines or in the fringes that allows me to do what only I can do. So for us doing this right now, I mean, we probably have stuff in the background with Claude Cowork or anything else that's happening adjacent to what we're doing in this conversation, but this can't be disrupted, at least not for a while. Like human to human connection and ideation can't be disrupted, at least for a while. And so what I would say to people that are leery of AI or of technological upheaval is to just try it, dip your toe in the water, see what's possible for you. And for us in the denture and implant model, we've always pushed the envelope on what's possible remotely, because we started off with a remote first bias because it's expensive to have a physical headquarters.
Oh.
So we started off all across the country. Now we're 47 locations in 25 states. And so we've had to lean into, how do we manage performance remotely? How do we track where everyone's at on their projects remotely? How do we communicate asynchronously? And so I think now it's providing a really awesome forcing function for anyone who cares enough to give it a try, because not only can you lean out your cost structures by leaning into this technology stuff, but you can also do more in a shorter amount of time, I would argue. And so also, you don't have to go. There was a blurb that I heard the other day about how certain tech companies are expected to lay a bunch of people off, but a lot of them actually aren't laying as many people off as we thought. Because what they're saying is, hey, if we keep the head count and we keep the best of the head count and we arm these people with all of these amazing tools, then we just increase our top line meteorically relative to what we thought was possible. So it doesn't have to be a zero sum game, glass half empty. The total pie can grow if we allow it to.
And to go back on to your human element, as far as I know, people are still coming through the doors. Again, you still have to get in their mouths. You still have to have consultations. You still have to have hygiene. You still have to have, full arch services. So I don't think that's going to end. But, something I had heard way back when, which you alluded to as well, is, to control the controllables, right? Not to get too far in front or to worry too much, in the past. I know Julianne and I have talked about, what a story is, what's truth, what are you telling yourself, and what's really happening. And so I think that is not only happening at a macro level, but definitely at a micro level in offices all day long. I want to kind of go along the lines of collaboration because we're talking about that. And I know obviously you collaborate with a lot of people in dentistry, right? Whether it's vendors, whether it's outside insurances. But what's your thoughts on just collaborating with other dentists, collaborating with other entities, collaborating with other, companies to achieve the goals that you set for yourself and SPG? And what's that look?
Well, my answer to that now is different than it would have been probably even 6 months or a year ago. And I think a lot of it is just due to the fact that I've put myself out there more to meet people and to understand that there are so many people running a parallel race to the one that I'm running. Like earlier today, right before this recording, I had a off the cuff 30-minute call with a fellow DSO CEO that I met at the same event where I met you guys. And we were just trading war stories. And it was amazing how you just get to the level of comfort so quickly when you know that you're running the same race. You just tear down a lot of walls, more so than you would think on the surface. Because you can scope someone out on LinkedIn, or you can do the circuitous method of research to learn about the person. But then you understand that you're doing the same things, you're solving the same problems. And especially if you're going after different segments of the market or you have completely different business models, you know that there's really no danger to having these open and honest conversations, or to open the kimono. And I just think that that's refreshing, because again, one of my favorite things to say is that we're not competing against other dentists as much as we're competing against the temptation of our patients to not go to the dentist or to spend their money elsewhere. Well, the size of the pie is freaking enormous. I mean,
Yes.
I spend my entire life trying to market to people that need what we do. And the irony is that they're the people that are least likely to want to lift a finger to go to the dentist, or they wouldn't be in the position to need dentures and implants in the first place.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the unlock, is how do we reach people and inspire action? And so for me, that obviously bears fruit in terms of my business, but it also bears fruit when we're rubbing elbows with other people that are doing what we're doing. And so I think going to like those DICOMA events that you guys were talking about where we met, and then going to these other sort of like closed door events where there's people that are like, hey, we're all doing the same thing. It's a safe place here. We can all talk. I think that's super powerful, because that's when you get the vulnerability. That's when you share, here's what's really happening. This is the way that dentistry is going. And then if we have some courage, then to use the phrase that I used on stage, we can shake up the Etch-a-Sketch a little bit and say, okay, knowing that what we've done in the past isn't working as well as we want it to, what can we now commit to doing differently to get a better alternative?
Love that. So, one of the things that I always look at, and I don't know how deep you get into this, but there's the technical side of this, of like what to do, systems, things like that, things to do better and all of that. But then there's also the human side of your niche, the niche of who you are. Like, who are you really? Why does somebody want to come to you versus the guy next door? Because we don't all resonate with all people. We all have our niche and we're all very different. And the more we lean into that, doesn't that have a huge impact? So how deep do you get into helping people to niche and really lean into who they are and how they represent that public facing?
Well, you have to remember I'm a dentist, so my mental models are very basic. I can only count to 32. So my mental model for that is, think about a bullseye where you have the concentric circles getting bigger and bigger and bigger, kind of like the Earth's core, mantle, crust. And I think about having harmony between those concentric circles being each company has its own founding vision or values, things that are that it cares about. And then we have to be harmonious between the founding cohort and the dentists, and then the dentists and the patients. All of that is connected. And so, to your point, not every patient is going to be a fit for my company. Not every dentist is going to be a fit for my company. So, step one is just delineating, what are you about? What's important to you? What are the types of procedures that you do? Who are the people that you serve? And so for me, that's the workflow. Is everything I think about is the dentist is the customer for me. So if I can serve the dentists, and then the dentists serve the patients. And we heard one of the speakers at the Dykema event talk about that phenomenon of not interceding on behalf of the patient care, because we can't disintermediate the relationship between doctor and patient. As leaders, what we can do is to help highlight opportunities, ask questions, drive improvement, help maintain commitment to goals. But the patient care is between doctor and patient. And so for me, for us at SPG, we're here to democratize the fixed arch. We want to allow the fixed arch of implants to be as accessible to as many people as possible. And the great thing about that is there's a great through line between me and the doctor and the patient, because we're all united around that aim. To be able to take people that don't have teeth, there's 30 plus million people in the US that don't have teeth, and help them get the best solution, so they're not beholden to grandma's dentures that you have to plunk in the glass of water when you go to bed at night. Like, we're better than that. It's 2026. So that's the through line for us. And I think for every company, there is a through line, whether you know it or not. And the key is surfacing it so that you can know it, your doctors can know it, and then your patients can know it. Because patients are going to get better service at the right place for them. They're not going to get the same level of service calibrated to what their specific needs are unless they go to the right place. And it's all about how you market yourself.
Right. Yeah. No, very well said. Regarding, you talked about mentorship before, and the one dentist that did what they did was very successful, but obviously they have physical issues, mental, what have you. I don't know this particular situation, but at the end of the day, it's about, doing what you do and doing what you love. What are some other mentors that you've had, as a kid growing up, currently, how they shaped you, whether it's been professionally or personally? Because again, I think having a mentor, asking to be a mentor, to have a mentee, I think is very important. So what are your thoughts on mentorship? Again, we talked about influence, but mentorship, and who have some been in and outside of dentistry?
There was a period of time from 2017 through 2024 where there was not a period of time where I didn't have a coach that I paid. And I feel like that was important for me at that time to actually get the most out of those engagements. Because if you pay, then you're going to do it. Or, I mean, that's how most of us are wired. So I had 6 to 12 month coaching engagements with a lot of different coaches, some from within dentistry, some from without. And I got different things from those people. But accountability buddies, they held my feet to the fire to make sure I did stuff. That was great. So that's one flavor of mentorship. Another flavor of mentorship that's more readily available than ever would just be reading biographies, listening to podcasts, cutting through the preponderance of information that's out there and finding stuff that is tailored to what you're trying to do, so that you can put yourself in the shoes of those people, living and dead, that have done great things, that have solved problems, that have contributed to the world in ways that seem impossibly large to us. And then the third bucket of mentors is just actual mentors, people that are maybe 5 or 10 years further along your journey than you are. And you'll find that if you can actually pique their interest, get their attention, then they're more than willing to allocate some time to you. It just cannot be a one-way street where it's like a time suck or like you're trying to bleed them dry. You want to be able to actually add value to them, whether that's them seeing themselves in you, them getting some kind of fulfillment through what you're able to achieve. You can't just be spamming people trying to get on their calendar. But I think those mentors are best found at events. You meet them, you introduce yourself, and then all of a sudden you've got a mentor.
I have a question to just tag on to that. Great question, Mike. So, when I think about how much I learn from coaching other people, how important do you think it is for people to seek out opportunities to help other people or mentor other people or give back? The generosity piece, like how much does that help to teach people in and of itself from that angle?
I think it's critical for us all to give back, because that belies the gratitude that we all should have, is the willingness to give back, to be thankful for those that left the ladder down for us. We should in turn leave the ladder down for the next generation or the next group of folks that wants to do what we're doing. But I think the other benefit to that is we learn through teaching, we learn through mentoring. Sometimes I feel like I learn more with people that I mentor or talk to than they do, whether that's a new doctor joining our platform or taking a tenured doctor and putting them in a position to mentor others. I see light bulbs going off for them, which triggers different light bulbs to go off for me. So really, there's a good quote. I can't remember who said it, but on a podcast recently was saying that I treat every person that I'm talking to as my mentor, because I'm humble enough to know that I've got something to learn from every single person that I cross paths with, even if it's a matter of I don't want to do what they're doing, so I can eliminate that. So no matter what, you can learn something from everyone.
Somebody said something to me about how, they don't feel like they can mentor somebody. They're not there yet. And I'm like, you always can mentor somebody because there's always somebody 5 years behind where you're at or 10 years. You've learned lessons and we all could be doing this. Some of the people that I mentor appear on paper to be more successful than me, but they come to me because I have something they don't have and I'm able to help them. Right. And so it's a two-way street always. So I appreciate that. Mike.
Yep.
Yeah, I know we have a few minutes left. And again, I want to thank you very much for being on the podcast and sharing yourself, and look forward to having more conversations and again, hopefully collaboration down the road as Julianne and I are working on manifestation. So I'm just curious about that before we pivot. But, obviously you manifested, like I said, you wanted to be a dentist at 8 years of age and you saw that through and you manifested, I'm sure, about success in your podcast. So I guess what's next? What's next for Dr. Alex Sharp? From day moving forward, what do you foresee yourself, whether it's personally or professionally, or those around you? What's the next 5, 10, 20 years looking like for you?
I mean, the next thing that's on my mind is I feel like we've we've sort of struck gold with our practice model in terms of finding the overlapping Venn diagram between what do dentists want, what do patients want, and what does the industry need. And so for me, my big, hairy, audacious goal that I think about every day, and that, to use your phrase, I'm manifesting, is we want to be the biggest full arch implant DSO in the country. That's what success looks like to us, and we're not going to stop till we get there. And I feel like when you think about the types of markets that need the services that we offer, the numbers of dentists that are just begging for this type of opportunity, not to mention the millions of patients that have gone underserved, that are in that dentally disenfranchised camp that we know and love so much. The stars are aligned for someone to do this. So, it might as well be us. And you look at market penetration, just like numerically, we still per capita do far fewer dental implants in the US than do a lot of Asian countries, a lot of European countries. So we're sort of behind the times. And you look at dentistry, we all heard the same presentation about how dentistry is growing at that stable 5.3% compound annual growth rate every year. But then surgery and implants is growing, almost double that.
Right.
And there's a reason for it. It's because people preferentially wait on things that they don't perceive to be a problem today, but then it becomes a more pernicious problem tomorrow, which is where surgery and implants come in. People that have deferred treatment for decades, eventually when the time comes, you're going to need implants, you're going to need tooth replacement. And so human nature being what it is, I feel like we serve that need.
I love it. So you've done a lot of podcasting. And so my question for you kind of as we wrap up, besides letting people know where they can find you, reach you and all of that, is what's the best podcasting wrap up question that you've ever answered? I'm curious.
Oh gosh, it's usually something completely off the wall that I wouldn't have thought to consider. My favorite one is on Invest Like the Best of Patrick O'Shaughnessy. His question that he ends with, and I haven't shamelessly taken this or anything, but it's, what's the kindest thing that anyone's ever done for you? That's one of my favorites to think through or to end with. And my answer to that question goes back to, like you were talking about your football days, Mike.
Yeah.
For me, it was basketball. And my coach in the 7th grade, I was the only Caucasian guy on my team. And it was interesting because I stuck out like a sore thumb. And I was like, okay, I gotta prove myself. I gotta be got to be doubly good. And he could tell that my coach could tell I was fritzing out about it, trying to prove myself. And he pulled me aside after practice one day and he was like, "You've earned your spot. You should be here. We're thankful that you're here, and we're going to do great things together." And he didn't have to do that,
Right.
Yeah.
but it made all the difference in the world to me because I was playing not to lose rather than playing to win.
Right. Right.
God.
And he helped to quiet the negativity, and I was like, all right, we're going to do great things together. And then we won state championships, and so just thankful to Coach John Nowden from Little Rock back in the day for doing that kind thing for me.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Mike, I want you to answer that question. I know we only have like 60 seconds because we got to let Alex jump on another call, but what's the kindest thing that somebody has done for you?
Well, I don't want to steal your thunder, Alex, but a similar thing when I was in ninth grade. I think I was kind of loafing or not finishing out a sprint, and I was always a big kid, quick kid. I think I had audacious to go, NFL back in the day, but he basically just said you're going to go nowhere if you continue down this path, or because you have the skill set, you have the speed, the size, whatever, but you need to, think like you're going to win. You think like you're going to get a D1. So he's like, "What do you want to do?" I said, "Well, I want to get a D1 scholarship." And he's like, "Okay, well, here's what you got to do." Da, da, da. And I was able to fulfill that. Because of that, and the rest of it took care of itself. But I made that goal and got that. One last thing, Julianne, and yeah, well, there's many. I am thankful for all the things that people have done for me. But little words of kindness like that, I think, go a long ways. And I would encourage people to do that all the time, to share those and be there for those people. Right? I would assume that whether it's share a kind word or let them know that you thank them. Julianne and I go back and forth a lot, and I think it does all matter because we all have tough days, we all have tough weeks. But I think just a little thing like, "Hey, you belong," and whether it's a new dentist to a practice or now as a partner, they belong, or they belong at the DICOM meetings, or they belong at this. I mean, if you're invited and you go, you belong, right? So,
And thank you to American Dental Institute, who we're in collaboration with on this podcast again. Alex, where can people find you?
Yeah, I mean, email alex@sharedpractices.com. I'm also Dr. Alex Sharp on LinkedIn. So reach out, drop me a line. Looking forward to connecting because Lord knows, I mean, we talked about mentorship. I've benefited from some amazing mentors. I'd love to help anyone else out who's on their own founder's journey because it's not for the faint of heart, as you two well know. It can be lonely out there, but there's a lot of us that are in the trenches with you, and I'll help however I can.
Thank you all. Thank you to our listeners who this is not as much fun if we don't have you, for what it's worth. That said, you can find us on Instagram at Influential Dental and certainly on LinkedIn and everywhere else. Or you can visit our website, influentialdental.co, for the magazine, the podcast, everything else. And then check out American Dental Institute as well. Thank you guys again. Alex, really appreciate you being on today.
Thanks, Julianne. Thanks, Mike.
thank you, Julianne. Thank you.